What's up, Blake? How you doing, man?
Hey, what's going on?
We are here to review a book that's been a long time in the making, are we not?
Yes, actually, it has been a very long time. This one has been quite a long time in the making, but it's a big book. We'll be fair.
Y- y-
It's a
Oh,
big undertaking. This one.
absolutely, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So, Blake, I do this with George. George
Mhm.
did not back this. I prefer to do these reviews with people who has backed the book, so we get two different opinions. We'll go over the outline real quick. We always do art, we do
Okay.
story, and then we
Mhm.
do physical quality. Now, there's a bunch of add-ons and everything else, but I always point people towards your website, thesplintering.com, where
Mhm.
you'll do a more in-depth review on the entire campaign as a whole. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, we're going to be doing, or at least I will be writing the crowdfunding review of this one. So that will include comments, of course, about the book itself, but yeah, all the extras, the communication, the shipping, all of that stuff. So if you want if details on that, definitely go to thesplintering.com soon. I've already started up writing that, but I wanted to do this first
Hmm.
so that I wasn't just like, reading my ideas from that. I wanted this to be my freshest take on it. So lucky you.
As always, the link of thesplinter.com will be in the description below, along with the link to the campaign. So,
And which
uh,
is still available in demand, I think.
it is. It
Yeah.
is.
So I think it's getting close to that 100K mark. So
It is. It's pushed. I think it's 5K away, but that's neither here or there. So usually let George go first. We usually attack the art first. So,
okay.
what? Go ahead. Let's hear what you said. What you
Okay.
think about the
So
art?
yeah, so this art, if anyone hasn't seen it, it is a horror book, so it has monsters and creatures and all sorts of horrific characters in it, but it's a very animated style of art. It's the characters are all very expressive, even the violence, and there's plenty of violence and blood in the book. Um, to me, was not too grotesque. It's something that I definitely would have let like a 13-year-old boy read, at least as far as the violence is concerned, and would not have freaked me out as a kid, even if I saw it, with the exception of maybe one scene.
Right.
But Yeah, I really enjoyed the art. It's not actually the art style that I usually prefer. One for horror books, and two even for like superhero books. But it was, I think, a good match for this book in the tone and the characters who are very sarcastic. It's a very lighthearted take on some of these monsters, and the actions very dynamic when things are happening and fights are going on. So I really dug the art in this one. What did you think, Leroy?
Well, I usually let you give your whole opinion. What about
Okay.
color? What about the colors? What did you think about the coloring?
The coloring, I think a lot of it is really well done. It's very dark tone because most of it takes place at night.
Hmm.
There's a few points where it's brighter during the day, but being that it's a dark tone book, a dark tones, but there's still plenty of color in it. There's a lot of technology that's used. He has this van that he drives around, and looking at X-rays, and has green and blue vials of stuff on his shelf, and I liked a lot of that. The color for that, sort of the mad scientisty looking stuff from some of those old movies.
Hmm.
So a lot of that really pops. Like I said, the blood doesn't really get to you too much as far as like the gore factor goes.
Hmm.
So it didn't really brighten that up. But yeah, it's a very but the coloring is usually pretty gritty with stuff like this. But this is a pretty clean book.
Yeah.
Everything's presented very clean, and the actions very clean, and the colors match that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think everything's really sharp. It's not too dull, and I thought everything stood out real well. I thought it was all the artwork. I thought was a really good blend all around.
Okay, much like you, I agree with some of the points, but I come to a different conclusion.
Mm,
This is not my general style of art that I enjoy, but I backed a book anyway, so I knew that going in. However, I think the style of art chosen does a disservice to the story.
you think it does a disservice to the story?
A
Okay.
disservice because the story is supposed to be dark. I don't think this story is meant for a 13-year-old kid to be reading this book. I mean, I feel like this is supposed to be a lot darker. However, the colors do make up for that. Like you said,
Mhm.
you pointed out. I agree that the colors are darker tone. So, and that kind of portrays the mood that pushes it a little bit that in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But just the style in general, I don't think match up with the story. However, I knew that going in, so I'm not going to grade it like terribly because I knew that going in. I knew when I backed it, there was no false advertising here. There was nothing going on, but I think that maybe a different style of art might have suited the story a little bit better, if that makes sense.
I think it is worth mentioning that the artwork, the line art, was done by Marco. Let's see if I pronounce this right. Maccagni?
Yeah.
Maccagni. So I'm trying my best, Marco.
Now,
and colors by Tanya Wicker.
Right.
So those are the two artists that we're talking about when it comes to the line art and the colors.
And let me point out, there is nothing wrong with the line art. He did a good job. I just think that it's not quite a match, if that makes sense. I hope it does.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's not quite a match. Like the style of art to the story.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, normally when you do see a monster book, you would see, some of the more, I don't want to say adult. What's the word? Just something a little bit more refined as far as the artwork is concerned. And again, it's not like quite Batman the animated series, but it's a very animated look. It's a very cartoony look. Most of these pages, if there's not something particularly violent going on, you could show to a kid and they would, respond to it. So it's a very approachable book in that sense. So I get kind of where you're coming from. I feel like that was one of its stronger points, is because it sets this book apart from other horror stuff, because, like I said, it does not seem to want to take itself real seriously. The characters are sarcastic. They have there's all kinds of little in jokes and stuff peppered through the book. Honestly, when this one was crowdfunded against what was that? What, the samurai
Shinobi
Sasquatch? Yeah. So it was this one and Shinobi Sasquatch were crowdfunding at about the same time, right? And they had this deal where you could get the bonus book. And I'm not going to talk about the bonus book too much, but you could get either the bonus book with that one or this one, depending on if they reach certain stretch goals. And I actually did not back Shinobi Sasquatch. I backed this. And I would have preferred the art in Shinobi Sasquatch. It's really just because of the feedback and the updates from the campaign that I went ahead and backed this one. Because like you, it's not normally my style.
Right.
But the way that they did it here, I think it works.
That's cool. We're allowed. I mean, that's why we
we're not.
two different.
We have to come to a consensus.
Oh, no. What are we going to do? I do want to point out, though, because I am going to give it a pretty good grade, even though I say that, because I think the execution of the art was incredible. Like the way that they portray the action scenes. There's the scene with the succubus, where it really pops at you.
That's the thing I'm talking about as far as not letting a little kid.
Right. So the action scenes are done really well. The colors are outstanding, and we'll get into the story. There's a particular part of the story where the art plays a huge part of the story. We'll get into that next segment. Overall, Blake, I'm going to give this a B for the art.
For the art? Okay, I was going to give it an A- for the art.
Okay, all right. So we're a little bit different, but not much. Like I said, I think that stylistically it doesn't match up, but the execution of what Marco does is outstanding. So, and then the length of the book, he maintains that execution. This is a really long book, and it doesn't let up. So it's the same quality throughout.
Yeah.
So good stuff, I would say. So let's get into the story. Now, Blake, the story, we include letters and editing. So what do you have to say about the story?
Well, I mean, I haven't really picked it apart from an editing standpoint. I didn't notice anything that was something that really stood out. I didn't see tons of mistakes, at least not that I recall. I read it in depth a couple weeks ago. I got it before you did. And I don't recall seeing any glaring mistakes, or at least continual mistakes. And I flipped back through it again last night before this conversation. I don't recall seeing anything that I would say was, something that took me out of the story as far as editing or lettering is concerned. I mean, most of the lettering, it's solid. It does what it needs to do. Some of it, I don't have really too many complaints with the lettering. I know there's a couple of panels where some of the lettering balloons didn't have the carrots coming off of them, or the arrows. but it was still pretty clear of who was talking.
Right.
So that didn't really bother me. It's just one of those things I guess was overlooked. So I don't have too much to say, and I guess when you don't notice the editing and you don't notice some of the lettering, then maybe you're doing well.
Hmm.
It's only when you start to notice those things that it's a problem.
Right.
So the unsung hero would be the editor here. Let's see, we'll say the name too if we have it. Edited by Brandon Crowther.
Hmm.
So, but the story itself, like the art, I think is a really fun take on these types of characters. I
I
think
would agree.
it's an interesting window into this world. Like they've tried to do these things with the connected universe in Universal. They tried to do it with what was that movie? Van Helsing. Put all these characters into a unified text, so to speak. And this one, I think, does a really good job of setting up this universe in a fun way. There are lots of fun characters here. I think the main character is likable. I think Heidi, a psychic, is very likable, and so I like both of them. I'll be interested to see if and when something else happens with them, if something goes beyond this book. But the story, it follows basically the doctor, whose name is skipping me for the moment. Her name is Heidi. What's his name? What's the doctor's name? Do you
Wyatt
recall?
Black.
Wyatt. Okay. That's right. So Wyatt is the doc, and he treats what they call crypto persons or something like that, who are monsters.
Furbies.
Right? Well, furpies would be and that's a good joke, right? And they use that a couple of times. It's a fun. They call the werewolfism or lycanthropy. They call it furpies.
Hmm.
And so there's all sorts of little funny little nods to things. There are moments in this that I did laugh out loud, so to speak. But it does move at a very fast clip. It's a big book and it moves very quickly. Sometimes that's great because you can sit down and read it in one sitting, but sometimes I do think that worked against it. I don't have my notes open because like I said, I've been writing up a review for this. But there were two sequences in this book that took a really long time to complete. And I think the book is the worst for it. The first being kind of after he leaves that area, after seeing the statue or whatever it is, the costume of that character. He says, "We're getting out of here." The major villain, and then it shows like basically a montage of him treating other creatures.
Hmm.
That goes on for probably longer than it needs to. It
Oh
just seems like
boy, we're gonna have some disagreements. I
okay.
can't wait. Keep going.
Okay. It goes on, like I said, I think it goes on longer than it needs to because some of these creatures kind of play into the story later as far as, his treatment of them.
Hmm.
Some of them just seem like, okay, they threw in this gag so that they could have this gag. But I feel like I would have liked with this first book and with this much girth as far as a book is concerned
You
to
said
see
girth.
the I'd like to see the world explored a little bit more than
Wow,
just
we are
the
really gonna have some
okay.
disagreements.
And the other sequence would be the last fight scene, which goes
Okay.
on a really long time. I'm gonna have to look up my notes while I say that because I know I counted how many pages this last fight scene was. I guess I could count them right now. I've got the book in front of me, but it was well done and the action's good. The artwork's good, but it's a full book's worth of content for a fight scene that I don't think it needed. So
Interesting.
that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like the story was fun. I enjoyed it. It moves along in a fast clip, but some of the pages I hesitate to use the word wasted, but I don't feel like with a book this big that they were all used to the fullest extent.
Yeah. So when I look at these, I compare them to other crowdfunding books, especially Comicsgate. This is how I grade because
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I do it. To me, this book was exactly the length it needed to be, and I would disagree with you. I'd say those pages help build out. They flesh out the world. They flesh out the character, because I don't think a shorter book would have been would have worked. Because now I know everything about Wyatt. He goes into
Mm-hmm.
depth about Wyatt's backstory, Heidi's backstory. She even has a supplemental in the end where they go into Heidi. That fight scene set up a scene where it was one of my favorite, where Heidi got injured.
Mhm.
Art is incredible in this scene. I just want to talk about it real quick. Where she's invisible, so they sprayed her with the UV spray, and then hit the lights, turned them off, so Wyatt could work on Heidi. And that's when you realize just how good looking she is. Let's say, but
well, yeah.
but
See the shapeliness.
the story, this Vaughn's writing and Marco's art come together. That's when it did match up, and boy, the book came to life for me on that scene. Like everything just
during
came
the
to life.
fight itself.
No, right after the scene afterwards.
After the fight.
But what I'm saying, the fight had to be that way for me because the next scene was supposed to be so emotional.
Right.
So it had to be. To me, it worked. I know you're saying it didn't work for you, and I respect that. But to me, it worked. I liked all the X-ray, the X-ray clips, and all that. I liked the backstory. Because he took his time and did some of that stuff, it makes me care. I would say more than a lot of other CG properties. I am really looking forward to the next Monster Indy. That's how well this story was done for me personally.
Okay. Well, I mean, I found the count. The last fight scene of the book is 24 pages long.
Yep, I was just looking at it as you were talking about it.
That's a long fight scene. Like I said, that's a whole book. As far as a floppy you'd pick up off the shelf, and then him treating other creatures, which a lot of which I don't think is all that consequential, other than just showing his growing frustration, is 12 pages.
Right.
Just that. And so I think you could have been better served by cutting some of that down, because really the only part of the world you see is his van, and then you see this place. It's a cemetery with a church attached to it, I guess.
I would agree on your assessment with the world building. It could have been, but first of all, it's the very first book, and I think he really did a service by fleshing the characters out here instead of building the world. I would hope if he did a second book that it would be much similar to this, except he would flesh out the world and not the characters.
Yeah,
but I see what you're saying.
There's a better way to do it. He could have done it a little bit more deftly and explored. I think the environment's a little bit more, and I think about some of the creatures that he helps. I mean, like the gag with the praying mantis creature. I mean, it's a funny gag, but I mean, does that matter ultimately, other than just being something that creeps him out? And I don't think it does. There's just, I don't know. There's two or three of them I think I would cut out. And,
I like it.
Get that from 12 to 8 pages. Cut the fight scene down, from 24 to maybe 12 pages.
I'm just opposite. I don't want to cut, like you're saying, the mantis, but he's a monster MD. I do want to see all the kinds of different monsters he's working on.
And you could have. I think this gag could have been put into a later book. I think he wanted to. It felt like he was trying to cram as many of the gags that he had in his mind. Again, the writer would be Vaughn Klaus. He had a whole bunch of gags in his mind. He wanted to throw them all in there. And at some point, you're just kind of thinking, okay, he still has more gags he wants to go through.
Right.
But after 2 or 3, I kind of got it. And then it went on for the third, 4th, 5th. Okay, how many more are we going to do? And then you get to the one with the succubus, which was, genuinely terrifying from a male perspective.
I will say this too, and disagree with you a little bit. You said you didn't notice the editing. I agree. However, because of the effects, the lettering stood out. And I've read a lot of books lettered by Mr. Weathers, and this is one of the finest that he's done as far as the effects are concerned, because there's a lot going on, like you said, with the action. You had 24 pages of fight scene. Eric did an outstanding job. And usually I don't notice this stuff. I don't care. It's whatever. Eric's going to yell at me for saying that, but if I don't notice it, it's better. But not only did I noticed it for all the right reasons. I'm like, this is really cool. So down to the splort. We got a splort in here. So that's a little insider baseball for you Comicscape folks out there.
Now the effects are nice. I mean, but the different Yeah, the bras and the vers and the all the different sound effects and stuff. I like a lot of those.
Hmm.
And a lot of those match the art and the things that are going on. So
Because
I'm
of the
very I see the splort there. There it is.
yeah, because of the lack of world building, I would say is I don't give it the plus. I give this an A. I don't give an A plus because of what you said, but this is
Mm.
an A for me, especially
Okay.
when I compare it to other Comicsgate books and indie books.
Mhm.
Like
Okay, so yeah, if
this
we're
is an
gonna
A.
grade it, I say that that's what I would have liked, but I don't. There's still a host of things to really like about this, and we haven't really touched on the Heidi's tale at the end. I don't know if we're gonna include that,
No, you can talk about it real quick if you
but
like.
I mean that really fleshes out her character and
Absolutely.
her connection. I really enjoyed that being added onto. I think that added a lot. Um, so I would still say, you know, it's probably a B
Okay.
story wise. It's hilarious.
So we're just the
It's
opposite
written
between
well.
the
Hmm.
art and the story right now. It seems we're swapping
Yeah, I guess
places.
so. Yeah.
Cool. Um, so then we do the physical quality, and to me, this is
Hmm.
great. It feels great. The
Now I'm going to share the camera real quick so that
Sure.
people can kind of see.
Hmm.
Hopefully, they can see the cover of this thing. So then my cat won't get in my way. But that's the cover of the book,
Hmm.
and there she comes. Yep. This is one reason why I don't have my camera on very much,
Right.
is because this one. Yep, there she goes. But this is a beautiful cover.
It is.
My wife, I kind of handed this to her last night, showed her the book, and she's like, "Oh, this is really neat." This is this is probably the best form factor. It's close to the best form factor I've seen from a CG book.
I would agree, other than one I just backed that George and I will be doing a review on soon. But
Okay,
they're
we won't
different
talk
for
about it.
yeah, we won't
Yeah.
talk about it, but they're different. They're great in different ways. I
Mhm.
would say, Blake. But this
Okay,
is one of the best. Absolutely.
so yeah, if you're looking for an example of how to do it, this is not a bad way. So you can see
That's
I did what they call the spot gloss
yeah,
on the cover, where
right.
the
The
I'm
with
hoping this coming across so you can see.
Yeah, you could see. Oh, well, I'll talk about it. So
Yeah.
you could see where the title is. It's spot gloss, and
Hmm.
then
And there's
different parts
the
of the
back, the image is spot glossed.
right, right. The characters are spot
Uh,
glossed. Exactly. You see it now a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, and it feels great. It got signatures on the inside. I got both Eric and Vaughn's
Yep.
in mine.
So did I.
So I think if you're looking to back the book still, the cat's going to my shoulder now. And this is why I don't have my camera on very much.
Nice.
So we'll turn it off
Right.
while she goes to sleep up here.
So, given what you said, and I
Mhm.
agree with everything you said, when I compare it to other, this is an A plus for me. The quality of this book. This is a
Yeah,
standard.
the paper quality is great. I cannot come up with a single complaint. The cover feels great. It's beautiful. Um, I hate to go all the way up to A plus. I'd like to be combative and argue about it, but yeah, this is an A plus.
So,
Absolutely stellar job, Vaughn and everyone involved in putting this together.
absolutely. So when I look at my grades, I give the art a B. I gave the story an A. I give the quality an A plus. I give this an A, like all
Okay.
together.
Now,
So
is yours an average, or are we just kind of doing a thing
I
where
kind of a little. It's your gut feel, I
okay,
do kind of look at all three and kind of give
yeah.
it, but all together, I give it an A.
Okay, so what I did, I gave the form factor an A plus, and I believe I gave the art an A minus, and I gave the story a B.
Hmm.
I think overall, I'm very interested to see what happens next year. I hope Vaughn does return to this world soon with the same creative team. Uh, but I think there were a few missed opportunities as far as where the story went with this first book, and so I'm going to give it a B plus.
Nice, still a good grade.
Yeah, of course.
I will say, like, just to get off on a different thing, like the books I've been receiving, there's definitely there is definitely a trend of the quality of art and story increasing within Comicsgate right now. I see that as the books I back.
Hmm.
Usually, I remember getting a stinker one out of every two. I call it a stinker, whatever you want to call it. It's fine.
The
But
dud, yeah.
right,
Disappointment.
I think
Hmm.
people are learning, and I think it did a great service to Vaughn that he took his time on this book. Because
Yes.
if he would have rushed it out
Hmm.
in the wild west of days of Comicsgate, like I don't that he took his time, developed. I mean, the book is great to me. Obviously, I'm giving it an A. That puts it in contention for my book of the year right
Mhm.
now. So I mean, we had a long time left, but
Yeah, I mean, I will absolutely read this one again and enjoy it again, I'm sure.
mhm, mhm,
And like I said, I'm interested to see where Vaughn and crew take this in the future. As far as other Comicsgate books go, we talked about one off the air, which I won't spoil what it is. When that was a real dud that I got recently.
it was a stinker.
It was a stinker, yeah. So I wouldn't say that everyone's learning. I've seen some people that are sliding.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely getting more competitive as far as these guys taking their time and getting this right. This is one that I did not back at first. It took me a long time to decide to back,
Hmm.
and it was because of the communication that Vaughn was putting out, showing how well everything was going. Showing this is the next pages we have. This is where we are in development. I had signed up for updates. I favorited the campaign on Indiegogo or something like that, and he was still sending out updates to people who had done that, not just to backers.
Hmm.
And so that's how he sold me on it. And
Okay.
so I only backed it like 3 or 4 months ago,
Nice.
and it had been available for a while.
So George and I always George. This is George's question. I love it. Based on this, would you back Vaughn again?
100%, yes, absolutely.
And I would say the same.
Mhm.
I would definitely say the same. Um, so there you go, another review in the books. I'm glad you made it, Blake. I mean, you and we talk from time to time.
Mhm.
So, and if people don't know, George writes for you on your website,
Yes,
thesplintering.com. So because we have that George connection, then we kind of talk now too.
the
So
George connection. Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe we'll do another review in the future, Blake.
Yeah, sure. Certainly, George can't back everything, right?
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder about that.
I do too, actually. Yeah, his art collection and stuff certainly suggests otherwise.
Yeah, a big shout out to Vaughn for producing this. For a first book. Jeez, like
Yeah, that it is very impressive for a first book. I didn't even think about that. It is,
yeah,
in fact, his first book that he's ever written. Is that correct?
I believe that's
Okay.
the case. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like this would not look out of place on a comic rack at the LCS. So
No, no. So we'll be following his career with much interest.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank everybody for watching. If you made it this far, I will, like I said, the book is still in demand. If you like what you heard
Mhm.
from me and Blake, you can click on the bottom. Blake is going to do a much more in-depth review on the campaign as a whole. Um,
That'd be on the
probably,
splintering.com.
which will be in the link in the description. He'll probably go over more of the Heidi story, more of the Shinobi Sasquatch Monster MD crossover, and all the stretch goals. I would assume, Blake.
Yeah, all the tchotchkes and pack-ins, stretch goals. Yeah, all that fun stuff. I know there was
So
a patch and what else? What else? I don't remember if there was a bookmark or not.
trading
That
card.
kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
And then also you do a lot of other reviews that
Mhm.
we don't do here on video reviews. So you can always go to the splittering.com and check those out. And you can also check out lame old video game reviews too. Is that all right,
Yeah,
Blake?
yeah. We definitely do a lot of retro game reviews. I don't do the modern game reviews, much to Leroy's chagrin. The next one that we have going up is tomorrow. We have a retro review of Speedy Gonzalez, Los Gatos Banditos for the
Mm,
Super Nintendo. So, if you are ever wondering, if over the decades you've ever wondered what someone might think about that game,
mm,
then be
mm.
watching the Splintering website tomorrow,
All
and
right,
you'll see
there you
what I
go.
think about that game, Speedy
Rock and
Gonzalez.
rock and roll. I do. I go splintering all the time. You do a really good job, Blake. I'd like to tell you that to you.
Thank you,
And I
thank you.
and I think we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody watching this, and we will see you in the next review. I think George and I are going to review Only Death Can Save Us next. So
Nice.
keep your eye out for that, and we'll talk to you guys later.